than me, and he did the control of coming, bringing the cranes together, and we had to bring those cranes, the bottom, almost together, and still we couldn't reach past the middle of the ship with it. And they'd have to put it on rollers and roll the boiler in place, and then later on come back here and put the other half of the boiler in.
You imagine the size of those gantry cranes. When they climbed up there, they'd bring their lunch, because that was an all-day affair for those guys that were up in that crane. And to drop those boilers in, 60 tons apiece, this is one of the first ships that they actually launched with the boilers and the machinery inside the ship already. Usually they would put that in after fit-out, so they'd bring the equipment in there and do it while she's sitting in the water. But this ship was literally, let's see if we can go on to the next one. Here's those boilers going in right now with that dance that the two cranes had to do to put it together. Literally stretching the two cranes to their maximum, trying to reach across the incredible width of the Edmund Fitzgerald and all of the hatches, the 22 hatches that are there. This is the size of that gantry crane. It made everybody nervous. I don't know of anybody that said it was really comfortable to be up there. It's always a thrill to be able to talk to people who've worked on these and to really give you some of the background. You know, for me, most of my discoveries going in to find this footage, this was actually in a library in a box called 301 GLEW. Nobody knew what it was. Luckily, I knew GLEW was Great Lakes Engineering Works, 301 was the hall number, so I realized that this was Fitzgerald. And I told the people at the library, could you just get this transferred? It was a reel of film. I said, would you please transfer it for me? And she goes, why? I said, oh, it's nothing. And she sent me up, she goes, you stinker, that's the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I said, you know, you can call the media, you can tell them that, that you have this footage, but, you know, technically I found it, it's your footage, do whatever you're going to do, but can you give me a lead of 6 months at least, so I can at least get my program together before you share it with the world. And surprisingly, there hasn't been another documentary with any of this footage in it. It was filmed by one of the guys from Great Lakes Engineering Works, one of the chief workers there, and literally it chronicles all of the major steps. Trying to push this giant boiler into place, I mean, just by millimeters to make it fit, and all of the different pieces going in. And it's nice to find shipyard workers that can actually tell me who these people are. When we were waiting for the train, I met one of the guys that actually was on the fit out, and I said, well, I've got all this footage, I want you to start naming people, because I have no clue who they are. I get lucky sometimes when I have newspaper photos that line up, and they'll say, like, this is the crew of, say, the cutter Escanaba, and I see the faces, and I remember the footage from 1937 that I have, and I can start to name some names. Well, there you go. Wendell Freeman, isn't it? And Edmund Fitzgerald. Out there to see his ship being launched. The story that I've heard about Edmund Fitzgerald is that his daughter said he'd never heard the song, which I find impossible, because Gordon Lightfoot, it was #2 on the charts. It was a huge song. In a time period when most songs were only 3 minutes long, here's this guy that comes out with a 6.5-minute song. The radio station DJs, quite frankly, love it, because it gives us a bathroom break. These Beatles songs that are 2 minutes long are lousy, because it takes a while for business. So we were very thrilled when the longer songs came out, but I wasn't even in radio yet. I started in radio in '82. And the song came out in 1976, inspired by a Newsweek magazine article that had come out that he saw, where somebody quoted Longfellow talking about the lake, it is said, never gives up its dead, and he was just moved by that and by the fact that they rang the bell in Detroit. And he talked about how that moved him to write this incredible song with so many details. And I'm so thrilled, Pam, that you're here, because two characters are mentioned throughout that song, the captain and the cook. And we have the cook's daughter here to talk about. Can you at least talk a little bit about your dad? Do you mind sneaking up here real quick and telling us? Yeah, that would be great. As we're watching footage, go ahead and hit the next button. We'll go through it. This is Pam Johnson.
I want to thank you all for coming. It's really thrilling to me to see so many that come out to love the ship as much as me and my family's here today. My daughter is here, and she was 5 years old when the ship sank. And my brother, Randall Williamson, he was raised by my father. And he had the, I don't know if you would like to speak about it. If not, I will. Some really cool things happened when my brother was in the Air Force. He was in the Air Force from 1965 to 1970, or 69. And that was during the Vietnam War. And you know, back then they didn't have what we have today, where all the media comes out and watches a war go on. Well, my dad had actually sailed to Vietnam, and he met up with my brother, and I believe it was twice that happened. And I just think that is the coolest thing, that during wartime they would allow a civilian meet up with a serviceman that was in the Air Force. And so I was very proud of my brother being in the Air Force. That was the coolest thing, that my big brother was in the Air Force, and he got to see our dad for a short period of time. And then also my brother had the opportunity to go with my dad for a week on a ship, and I don't know which one it was. For a week he spent with my dad while my dad did the cooking, and I'm sure my brother did all the eating to test to make sure it was good enough for the crew. This year I decided I wanted my daughter to be here really bad, because she was 5 when it happened, and she can remember him a little bit. When I asked her just the other day, what are your memories of your grandpa? And she said she can remember him being wearing white, and that he was far away on a ship. Not going to show it?
Oh, yeah, we'll do that in a little
Okay.
bit.
And then my son, who was 4 at the time, he can remember also the pictures of my dad being on a ship. And my son Alan said he was very scared that he would fall into between the dock and the boat. There's my dad. Oh. Thank you. I love him so much, and I miss him terribly, and I feel like he's here with me now, holding me up, so I'm able to tell you a little bit about my life as a daughter of a cook and a sailor on the Great Lakes. My brother and I traveled a lot to take my dad or pick him up from different ports, and when I got 16, I got my driver's license. Then Randall was gone, and so it became my job to take him everywhere. So I got to go to a lot of places to either drop him off or pick him up, or we would go to Toledo ports, and sometimes we'd have to go around through the docks because of trains, you know, so like you guys had tonight. So we would spend a lot of times waiting for trains to go by so that we could get to see my dad for 5, 10, 20 minutes or an hour while the ship was either being unloaded or loaded. While I was on the ship with my dad, he fed us all, and obviously it's worked. And I, as my own self, I cooked 12 years in the school. I was a baker, and I was 12 years at a nursing home, and I was a cook in that situation too. But my greatest love was like my dad. I love baking, and my dad was really good at baking bread and pastries and stuff. And during the wintertime, when the ships weren't sailing, he would take baking classes, and then he would bring home his homework, and so we all got to eat his French pastries and his little custards and everything. So we had an opportunity to eat his homework. This here is a cookbook that I happened to find, and I'm not sure where. I think when our mother passed away, I think we divided stuff up in things that were kind of like important to me in my life. I think Randall had given to me, and this is a cookbook that was dated January 15th, 1942. And it's odd because I was born January 15th, 1952. But some of the things that are in there, it's kind of odd. It'll say at the beginning, now we must start refrigerating our foods as the sailors are getting sick. So back in 1942, they didn't have the concept of HACCP principles or good food techniques and everything. So I've read a lot in this book, and actually I took a chili recipe that was in the book, and I won a chili contest by using my dad's recipe. I think they felt more sorry for me because I put my dad's picture next to the cookbook, so who else could they vote for but me? This is a Gordon Lightfoot picture a couple years ago. I had the opportunity in Topeka, Kansas. I live in Kansas now. I took my three of my grandchildren. I have 18 of them. These 3 belong to my youngest son, Jeremiah, and that's Cynthia, Isaac, and Isaiah. And they were really excited to be able to go. And every concert we've ever gone to, we've been able to get in free and get backstage passes. And so it's been an honor to meet him 3 times. A couple years ago, I took Lori and my son Alan, and we went to go see him in Winston-Salem. And he remembered me, and my son plays the guitar, so they talked guitar business. And we were really honored to be there and be allowed to go backstage. This is up at Whitefish Bay. This was like the first time I went, I've only gone twice. I can't remember which time it was. But I felt compelled to blow my dad a kiss that evening. And I said, "This is for you, Dad." And of course I was pretty emotional at that time because this was new to me. I didn't attend services until Gordon Lightfoot in 2000 said to me, "Why aren't you going? Why aren't you speaking for your dad? You're his voice now." And I thought, well, nobody would believe me, or they think that I'm blowing it out of proportion, or that it isn't as big a deal as obviously all you think it is as I do. So I went ahead and went, and that's when I don't know if I have a picture over there. It's my son Jeremiah and Gordon Lightfoot and myself. And that's when he talked to me a little bit, and he had the opportunity to pull me aside and said, "What do you think about me mentioning your dad in the song?" And that, oh, the tears just came. I was so proud that he would mention my father as well as a captain of all things. That was the sweetest thing I felt that a songwriter and a singer could do for our family and the rest of the crew. So when I talk, sometimes I like to say that I'm not grieving my father anymore, that I'm celebrating his life. And then gives a chance to be with my family today. My sister-in-law's here, and my brother drove up from Toledo. My daughter came all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm from Kansas, so we've traveled quite a ways, a few miles between us all, to come to do this speaking this evening. The one in the middle here, he's got the checkers on. I forgot his letter, but he wrote a letter to my dad last year, dated November 23rd, and he said, Dear Papa Rafferty, my name is Isaiah, and I just want you to know how much I love you, and I know about you because my grandma Pam tells me about what happened to you on the ship. And even though I know you're in heaven, I hope that you'll get this letter and this message on November 10th, 2012. I don't have it with me, but that's the essence of the message. And he says, even though I know you're in heaven, I know you'll get this message. So Dad, I'm sorry that you died, but I'm glad that we have a chance to celebrate your life now. And this is supposed to be a good time and not to be so much of a sad time for us all. Do you have anything else, Michelle? Right after I found out that the ship had sank, actually I found out on a Tuesday, the ship sank on Monday night. I was down in Fort Benning, Georgia, and I was 8 months pregnant with my 4th child, and my daughter Lori, she was 5 years old. So I had a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and one growing in the oven. And I decided maybe I should just stay in Georgia because I'm getting ready to have a baby, and maybe that would just be best for my emotional health, which is what I did. But my my husband was in the Army, and he was on leave for like 47 days. I'm pregnant, I've got 3 kids, I'm going crazy. So I went next door to my neighbors just kind of to get away for a little bit, and he come knocking on the door and said, you need to come home. And I said, what do you want? And he said, no, you need to come home. And I said, what do you want to do? You want to go to the movies? And I'm digging through the newspaper, and that article was there. And my mom had just called and told my husband Bill, please get Pam and tell her to call home. So it's funny how when you have things happen to you, how you change a little bit. And I reverted back to 5 years old, and I said, is my daddy dead? I would have never said that, but I guess my emotion took over, and I just couldn't believe that when my husband said, well, your dad was on a ship. And that's all I had to say. So I called home and talked to my brother and my mom, and it was confirmed at that point. So I really